There's a storm coming. Can you feel it? I think the storm is already here. AI agents are executing tasks in seconds that otherwise would take teams weeks and months. Models are taking decisions even before leadership teams can convene. Entire job functions are being automated. Entire industries are being restructured. Entire business models are being obsoleted. Not in a matter of decades, but in a matter of weeks and months. And in the middle of all this, I, as an entrepreneur, stand at a crossroad. Do I become more automated? Or do I double down on the one thing that I know AI will never be? And my answer is, I want to be more deeply, more unapologetically, more human. Because in a world where intelligence is abundant and execution is automated, intent becomes the differentiator. And intent is expressed through one thing: care. So caring is the last unfair advantage of an entrepreneur in the age of AI. Because here's what AI cannot do. AI cannot stand in front of a bus to protect my people. AI cannot look someone in the eye and tell them a hard truth that they can bear with. AI cannot create that moment where someone feels visible, seen, unexpectedly happy. AI can simulate care, but AI cannot mean it. Now let me be very precise as to what care means in the AI age. Care is not sentimental. It must be designed into the system. For culture is no longer a vibe. It is infrastructure. And it starts with a question every entrepreneur must ask. What can my people do which AI cannot? And the answer is simple, but it's the hardest thing to do. Entrepreneurship, not the startup kind, the everyday kind. The person who walks into a room and owns it, not because they hold a title, but because they hold the judgment and the context. That person cannot be automated. That person is my competitive advantage. And you know what? I don't hire entrepreneurs. I build them. I built them by caring enough to take risks on them. I remember my little startup 15 years ago. We had just won our first enterprise client. It was one of the largest tire manufacturing companies in the world. As the founder and CEO, the client would have expected me to be in every governance meeting. That's how it works, right? The big guy turns up, he doesn't leave such important things to others. But I realized one thing, that my colleagues, Nidhi and Sharath, they were the ones managing the project on the ground. They knew the client, they knew the problems, they knew the context, not me. So my co-founder Srikanth and I, we decided to step aside and we pushed Nidhi and Sharath into the deep end. And they rose. They rose not because we asked them to. They rose because we stepped out of the way. This became a pattern. Client after client, project after project, we pushed someone in the deep end, gave them the context, gave them the responsibility, gave them the room to lead, and they rose. And I realized something very profound, that I need to push leadership to where the context lies. Because context forces you to own the outcome. It forces you to stop waiting for the big guy to turn up. It forces you to start thinking and acting like an entrepreneur. That is contextual leadership. Not some policy or management funda. It is the deliberate act of creating entrepreneurs, one context at a time. Now let's see its relevance in the AI world, where it's not optional. Worker bees, people who execute tasks, what they're told, they're going to be fast replaced by agents who will do it faster, cheaper, and without any complaints. Nidhi walking into the governance meeting and owning the room. Sharath making the judgment calls that kept the client relationship intact. That's not something an agent can do. That is entrepreneurship. And that was born the moment Srikanth and I decided to step aside. And something very beautiful flowed into our culture. Contextual leadership. I realize when I'm talking to a developer, in the context of a program she developed, in that context, in that conversation, I am not the leader. She is. Not as a gesture, as a necessity. That is an entrepreneurial culture. In our culture, we did not have subordinates. We had only colleagues. There was no sir culture. There was no hierarchy of respect. For hierarchy of respect blocks the flow of context and judgment and decision and moves it upwards. Hierarchy slows down decision making. Ignoring context scales mistakes. The winners are organizations which distribute leadership throughout the organization intelligently. That's what we did. And that worked with us brilliantly. Now let's see what is powering all this. When Srikanth and I, when we pushed Nidhi and Sharath into the deep end, we were taking a risk. It could have failed. The client could have walked. We would have lost our first enterprise customer. And that happened. It was on us. We were vulnerable. That is care. It's not the sentimental kind, but the care where we say, I believe in you enough to bet my reputation, my outcome, my organization on your growth. That is the foundation on which entrepreneurs are built. Next shift I want to talk to you about is power, how I view power. Power is not defined by titles. Power is not defined by seniority, age, tenure. Power is determined by responsibility. The more responsibility you take, the more power you'll have. Now I'll tell you the story of Anshita. This was when we were 45 people. Our head of HR had just left us. And the other person in the HR team was Anshita. She had just joined us, very junior, very experienced, fresh out of college. So I had a choice. I could go out into the market and look out for a seasoned HR executive, which I thought I would do in parallel. But in the meanwhile, I went to Anshita and I said, would you take over the responsibilities of HR? She thought I must have been crazy, which I probably was, because she would have gone, look, I'm junior, I'm inexperienced, I'm not ready yet. However, she didn't say that. She took on the responsibilities, all of it. Recruitment, onboarding, compensation management, performance management, employee engagement. And you know something marvelous that I witnessed? She didn't just fill the gap. She grew into the gap. Anshita took on the responsibilities, owned the outcome, delivered consistently, created influence within the organization, and became powerful. Her power did not come out of any title I gave her. In fact, I didn't give her a title for another year and a half. Her power came from the responsibility she took. That was the culture we created, where people could take on responsibility and could become powerful. And the next shift I want to talk about is character. Initiative and integrity. They have always been important, but in the age of AI, they are non-negotiable. Initiative is your willingness to step into ambiguity and create clarity by saying yes to as many things as possible. And integrity is doing it each and every time. Not just on your best day, but even on your last day, even on your last working day, for how you leave an organization defines you as much as how you help build it. I saw initiative and integrity play out throughout the organization. Deepak lifted up his hands and said, I will go to North America and build our business there. We didn't ask him to. He took the initiative. He said yes. He went on, and partnered with Sachin and built a multi-million-dollar business out of nothing. My business partner and good friend Srikanth, I can't think of a single time where he didn't deliver on time. Most of the time, ahead of time, under-promising and over-delivering. Srikanth was the epitome of initiative and integrity. And you know something? People looked up to him. Not because he had a title. Not because he was the loudest in the room. Well, that was me. But because he always did what he said he would. That's what mattered. And it wasn't just Srikanth, Sachin, and Deepak. It became a culture. Can you imagine a culture of people where people lifting up their hands saying yes and doing? The energy, the enthusiasm, the effectiveness of such a culture. And in the AI age, let's see how this is relevant in the AI age, where every customer interaction is tracked, every commitment is logged, where AI maps thousands of data points, thousands of patterns across data points. In such a world, every customer interaction is tracked, everything, every promise, a promise that you make, a promise that you broke, when you under-promise and over-deliver, everything is visible. Credibility is revealed in real time in the AI age. In such an age, trust is the scarcest commodity. It takes years to build, but takes only a moment to lose. Now, this is even more true in founder-led organizations. People don't just listen to the words of a founder, they internalize it. It is really important that you can use that to create a culture of trust, accountability, initiative, and integrity. So it's important for leaders and founders to walk the talk, because when leaders and founders walk the talk with initiative and integrity, they will create the world that they walk in, which is the world of entrepreneurs. I didn't create such a world on my own. Srikanth and I were very different kind of people as partners. Our temperaments, our skills, our strengths were all different. People learned from two different leaders. They saw two human beings come together, create space for each other, and create something larger than what we could individually do. That is also that human collaboration, that creating that space. That's not something an agent can do. Now let's see what is powering all this. When Deepak lifted up his hands and said, I will go, we didn't just say go. We said, we believe in you. We trust in you. We are vulnerable if you fail. We've got your back covered. That is what gave him the psychological sense of security to actually go out and do it. Srikanth and I, in our partnership, we created space for each other. That's also care. That's also risk, the risk of trusting someone completely. That's what built the culture. Now let me tell you what is underlying all of this. The fundamental message that's underlying all this: build a culture of genuine care, contextual leadership, earned power, initiative and uncompromising integrity, and the numbers that you seek will follow, whether it's revenue, profit, CSAT, ESAT, valuation, whatever it is. Because here's what AI is really asking of us: not to be more automated, but to be more intentional, to be more human, to be more disciplined about our commitments, and to base our life on our commitments, not our feelings. Because our feelings will change, not our commitments. And our character is defined by our commitments. Agents can execute. Models can decide. Data can inform. But the question of what kind of a world I want to create, what kind of world I want to leave behind for my daughter Nishka, that question will always be inherently human. It's a question of intent, it's a question of responsibility, it's a question of initiative, it's a question of integrity. That's not just good leadership, that's not just good business. That is what it takes to be a good human being. In which case, technology was never the advantage. It is always my capacity to care. Care is the source, entrepreneurship is the outcome. My willingness to risk, my willingness to be vulnerable, my willingness to bet and believe in my team enough to bet my entire organization on their growth. That capacity of mine to care, that is my last unfair advantage as an entrepreneur in the age of AI. Thank you.